You know what? Before I even get started, I want you to tell me in the comments whether you still believe the official narrative out of Kiev. Because after the last 48 hours, even Zelensky's most loyal Western backers are suddenly looking nervous. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, because this story is going to reshape the war, the aid, and the future of Ukraine's leadership and of Europe. All right, let's talk about what just happened, because the timing is what has made this entire thing explode. 2 days ago, Volodymyr Zelensky looked straight into the cameras, smirked, and told the world he wasn't afraid of Donald Trump. A little swagger, a little showmanship, a little I can handle myself. And then, not even a full news cycle later, his palace gets raided. His billionaire godfather vanishes, his justice minister collapses under pressure, and Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, the agency Zelensky just tried to neuter 4 months ago, that agency suddenly unleashes a storm that looks less like an investigation and more like a calculated strike at the presidency itself. And I know what some of you feel. Maybe it's fake, maybe it's Russian disinformation, maybe it's some telegram chatter, some rumor that spiraled out of control. Except this time, it's not coming from Moscow. It's coming from The Spectator, one of Britain's oldest establishment magazines. They didn't even soften it. Their headline? The scandal that could bring down Volodymyr Zelensky. That alone should tell you this is not business as usual. And let's talk about what they found, because it's the stuff of political satire, except it's real, very real. Among the prizes discovered, a solid gold toilet, cupboards literally stuffed with 200 euro notes, bags of cash, luxury assets, crooked contracts, and $100 million fortification scam that somehow involved Energoatom, the state nuclear operator. And at the center of this is Timur Mindich, longtime friend of the Ukraine president, business partner, co-owner of Zelensky's Kvartal 95, the guy who threw the birthday parties, handled the money, and reportedly acted as the bagman. Now, he's gone. Fled the country just hours before the raids, and everyone knows what that means. Someone tipped him off. Someone powerful, someone close enough to feel the heat. But Mindich isn't the only one. Justice Minister Herman Halushchenko suspended. Advisors implicated. Insiders panicking. NABU says it has over 1,000 hours of recordings, some allegedly with the president speaking in code at Mindich's apartment. That's not a leak. That's not a coincidence. That's a message. And here's where it really gets wild. The very agencies now tearing open Zelensky's inner circle are the same ones he tried to place under his control back in July. He used emergency wartime laws. He claimed without evidence that NABU was compromised by Russia, and he tried to fold both NABU and SAPO under presidential authority. The reaction? The first mass protests in Kiev since the war began. Brussels furious, Washington alarmed, civil society in revolt, and under all that pressure, Zelensky backed off, but not before showing everyone exactly what it is that he was afraid of: scrutiny, independent investigators, people he could not fire. And now those investigators have come back with a vengeance. 70 raids, coordinated operations, surveillance tapes, financial trails, lavish assets, offshore networks, and a growing list of suspects that reads like a who's who of the Zelensky universe. And you know what the worst part is? For years, Western leaders told us Zelensky was the anti-corruption champion, the reformer, the savior of modern Ukraine, the man replacing oligarchs with transparency, the man tasked with cleaning up Ukraine's image enough to admit it into the EU club. But look at his own orbit. Look at how many of his childhood friends, his TV colleagues, his business partners ended up with government contracts worth tens, sometimes hundreds of millions. Look at Firepoint. Before the war, a casting agency for Kvartal 95. After the war, a multi-million-dollar drone manufacturer. A company producing a Flamingo cruise missile without any competitive bidding. In any other country, people would be screaming conflict of interest. In Ukraine, it's passed off as innovation. The fog of war may have helped in the cover-up, but then come the audio recordings. NABU released only a teaser, muffled voices, code names, broken Russian, just enough to say, "We have you on tape." Not enough to tell the public the whole story. Because the intended audience isn't you, it's the people inside the palace. And that's where the real battle begins, because this isn't Ukraine versus Russia. It's NABU and SAPO, funded by the West, trained by the West, backed by the West, versus the SBU, the Domestic Security Agency, loyal to Zelensky. One side serves empire. The other protects the throne. Ukraine, far from being the sovereign democracy we were told, looks like it's being pulled apart by the very hands that built it. Yulia Tymoshenko, who got laughed at for saying it, now looks like the only person in Kiev who was actually honest. She called it a disenfranchised colony. Back then, everyone rolled their eyes. Today, Western officials are not laughing anymore, because now it's out in the open that Zelensky was made by the West, used Western money, Western taxpayers' money, and continued that old Ukrainian tradition of funneling cash to his friends. And everyone turned a blind eye. And let's not forget the symbolism here. 10 years ago, during the Maidan Revolution, the gold toilet inside Yanukovych's mansion became the emblem of everything that Ukraine wanted to overthrow. The gold toilet was the symbol that never again meant something. And now, a decade later, another gold toilet has turned up. Different president, different billionaire, same story. Except this time, it's not the Kremlin exposing it. It's Ukraine's own anti-corruption agency, backed by the same Western governments that have poured money into Ukraine's war machine. The myth of Zelensky, the reformer, the truth-teller, the incorruptible leader, is collapsing under the weight of golden toilets and 200 euro bills stacked like library books. And if this investigation goes where it looks like it's going, Zelensky will not only be questioned, he will be cornered. Because he's no longer convenient. Because the West is now torn between protecting him and protecting itself. They can scapegoat him, but they cannot wash their hands of the system they helped to design. And it's time to question those within the European Union who are still backing Zelensky. How far does the money trail go? European Union officials were quick to warn Ukraine it must keep cracking down on corruption, yes, but almost in the same breath, they also offered assurances that aid will continue to flow. The implication is clear. The Ukraine war will continue because the real target there is Russia, with or without Zelensky. So comment below. Is this the beginning of the end for Zelensky? Is he no longer the convenient poster boy for the empire looking to expand eastwards? And second question, who replaces him when the empire needs a new hero? Subscribe to APT because this story isn't just breaking, it's unraveling, and we're just getting started.